Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. As of recording, it is before 10 o'clock in the morning. Just dropped my son off at school, and, I was thinking the past few days that I really need to record another episode. And really need to. It's not that I need to. It's that I want to record another show. Geek Therapy, I've stated this, multiple times before in the past, since 2017 when I started this podcast, and it was a radio show from 2017 to 2024. I recently nixed the broadcast portion of it. It was just too much to handle with a newborn child and a 4-year-old, about to be 4-year-old. So I've stated multiple times that Geek Therapy Radio is therapy for me. Just talking about geek things and occasionally venting. Y'all longtime listeners of the show know that I do vent from time to time, as I'm prone to do. So it's for me. Probably, I don't know if this is selfish to say. I think it's for me more than it is for you. And to say, I say that because I appreciate everybody who has stuck around, everybody who continues to listen to Geek Therapy Radio, everybody who continues to sometimes share it with their friends, let their friends know about Geek Therapy Radio, because really the show is letting you into my life in a reasonable way. It's really a peer into my mind. You could listen to a lot of other podcasts for sure that are super well produced, have lots of bullet points, lots of talking points, well researched, and some of my episodes are like that. Very few and far between do I make a really research polished podcast for Geek Therapy Radio. Mostly it's just stream of consciousness talking about like technical things and geek things and gizmos and gadgets and computers and areas of our geekdom that are fascinating to me at the moment. Sometimes it's me just kind of venting about life, but I think, I don't plan on that. That's part of the realness of this podcast, I think. I don't have 60,000 listeners every episode. It's nothing massive like that. Every episode is a few hundred listeners, something like that. Even after all these years, it's not this big, massive thing. And it's probably because all these episodes aren't super well researched. I don't deep dive into subjects all the time. Sometimes I do. Over on the museum's podcast, Houston Museum of Natural Science, I am the podcast manager over there. The podcast is called Beyond Bones. So if you search HMNS Beyond Bones and you look for like the purple color scheme, that's me doing extremely deep dive content. That is me like digging into, for instance, the latest episode I released over there on the Beyond Bones podcast, and I'll link it in the podcast description here. The latest episode I did there was on scientific dating. So, for instance, you hear scientists say the universe is 13.7 billion years old. The solar system and the Earth are 4.5 billion years old. The asteroid impact that killed off the dinosaurs happened between 67, 68 million years ago now. That is the current, more focused estimate. You hear about a T-Rex fossil that's 70 million years old. The Triceratops that's 75 million years old. Mammoths that are 10,000 years old. You hear all these numbers thrown out by scientists when how they date things, how they determine how old a fossil is, for instance. So in that episode, I discuss how they get there. And the angle I approach it from is that I think most of us, we hear the term carbon-14 dating. We hear that like once in high school, and then we hear that carbon-14 isn't super reliable because the sample can be contaminated. There's all sorts of other variables to it. It is not reliable, or it's not accurate, beyond around 20,000 years or so, and that really depends on the sample. Point is, most of us hear about carbon-14 dating, and then we dismiss it. Okay, carbon-14 dating is not accurate, so the science is not accurate. None of these date scientists are throwing around are accurate because carbon-14 is only accurate in a very limited number of situations. What I go into in that podcast is, hey, by the way, just using radiometric dating alone, which carbon-14 uses radiometric dating. That's the type of dating that it is. There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of more methods of carbon dating alone. It's not just carbon-14. So, for instance, there's samarium neodymium dating. There's lead dating, where you're basically measuring the ratio of lead. What is it? Lead. Don't quote me directly because I don't have the information right in front of me, but it is correct in the museums podcast that I wrote. That's like lead 307 to lead 306, or lead 207 to 206. It's the isotopes of lead, of the element of lead. So that helps you determine, you know, how many millions or billions of years old something is. For instance, an asteroid. That's how they date asteroids. Every asteroid that we measure on Earth that originated in our solar system they've determined the age to be around 4.5 billion years old. Not just using the lead dating method, but using several other radiometric dating methods alone. Everything we pull out of outer space, the moon rocks we pull back, we test that. It's around 4.5 billion years. The margin of error is 1%. By the way, that 13.7 billion years old for the universe, the margin of error there is 200 million years. So when a scientist says, we estimate that the Earth is, that the universe is 13.7 billion years old, it could be 13.5 billion years old, it could be 13.9 billion years old. That 200 million years sounds like such a wild margin of error that a lot of people just kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. That is way too wild of an estimate to be anywhere reasonably accurate. But the actual math of it, that 200 million years of margin of error out of 13.7 billion is a margin of error of 0.01%. In other words, when you hear that the universe is 13.7 billion years old, we know that within 99.99% accuracy. And every time we study it, every time we look at it, we bring the accuracy into sharper focus. So that's that. And, you know, they measure the age of the universe. How they measure the age of the universe is if carbon-14 dating is unreliable, especially when dating, asteroids and things like that. Well, that's one of the, radiometric is one of the ways that they use to estimate the age of the universe. The other one is called the redshift. Redshift or blue shift, they can tell the rate of expansion of the universe. It's a constant rate. It's called the Hubble constant, actually. And it has to do with, it's like 73 megaparsecs per whatever. Like it accounts for parallax, and it's measured on an arc. It's crazy. The math is insane, but it's repeatable and it's accurate. So that's one of the ways they determine the age of the universe, using the Hubble constant, the rate of expansion, and it's accelerating. I'm getting off into the weeds about scientific dating, but that's to prove the point that while you listen to Geek Therapy Radio, and while Geek Therapy Radio is definitely more of a stream of consciousness podcast, if you want to hear me deep diving into subjects, you should go subscribe to the Beyond Bones podcast, the Beyond Bones podcast from the Houston Museum of Natural Science, if you want to hear me deep dive and do it thoroughly well researched, and even doing interviews with experts. You know, one of the blessings of working for a museum is that, hey, if I don't know about a subject or I want more input on a certain topic, we have a museum full of curators and educators and doctors and master's degrees and all sorts of experts in their fields that I can say, hey, I'm doing a podcast on scientific dating. I can walk into our paleontology lab and say, hey, Ryan Price or Colin Diggins, y'all are experts at scientific dating, especially when it comes to fossils and dinosaurs and all sorts of things like that. What is your input? I'm writing this podcast about scientific dating. Can you help me clarify something? So it's super duper helpful in that regard, that I get to make these podcasts for the museum that are so well researched, and I can really, I'm shoulder to shoulder with the experts, and they're right there with me, and I can just turn to them, hey, what do you think about this? So anyways, if you want to hear me do more well-researched podcasts, thoroughly well-researched podcasts, subscribe to the Beyond Bones podcast from the Houston Museum of Natural Science. The thumbnail is purple. There's an old Beyond Bones that I am trying to get rid of, take down from the internet. It's a past iteration from like 2019 or whatever, and just kind of confuses the matters. The person that published the podcast no longer works for the museum, and I was able to determine through some through some Sherlock Holmes investigation that he was uploading it to a defunct platform, a defunct back end. So for instance, I upload my podcast, Geek Therapy Radio. The back end we use is Spreaker. I also use Spreaker for the museum's podcast. Back in the day, they used, I think it was Stitcher or something like that as the back end, and it's defunct. It's no longer exists. So it is a pain in the butt to be hunting down, like for instance, I had to email Google, raise an actual human being saying, hey, can you unlist this old Beyond Bones, because it is not our podcast anymore. It's an old version. We're not using it anymore. Can you unlist it? I don't have the credentials. The person who uploaded it doesn't work here anymore, and the back end they used doesn't exist anymore. So can we unlist it? So I did raise somebody from Apple, and they said, all right, we need you to put this code into your RSS feed and da-da-da. Like, there's all sorts of hoops. I'm like, can you just go to the, it's called Apple Podcast Connect. It's the back end for Apple. Can you just unlist it? Like, what ID and credentials and do you need from me just disable it? Just unpublish it. Just unlist it. That's all you need to do. Why do we got to jump through so many hoops? I know they got to jump through hoops because they need to keep it, one, confidential. They need to protect people's data for sure. So I get it. I'm not mad about it, but it's like, hey, I am the institution that made this podcast, but it was made before my time. I am from the company. I represent the company. I can give you anything I need to about the company, so you know I'm legit. Can you just unlist it? Anyways, so yeah, Beyond Bones podcast. Look for the purple thumbnail. It has all sorts of like artifacts and figurines and things on there. It has like the Mercury Mercury capsule that we have in our museum, which I've done a podcast about. It has like a pharaoh, it has a bug, a beetle, a butterfly, different kind of Egyptian artifacts that are, it looks like clip art. It's like cool clip art. Anyway, the color theme is purple. Beyond Bones Podcast, HMNS, Beyond Bones Podcast. The color theme is purple. That's where you can go listen to me do more deep dives into some really super fascinating subjects. Our museum, by the way, has over 2.5 million artifacts, million pieces. So there's no shortage of information there. I'll get off the museum podcast for a minute. I'm just letting y'all know where y'all can hear me on a much more regular basis, doing much more deep dive subjects. The next episode I'm working on, I believe, for all you gems and minerals fans, they're minerals, Marie! I'm going to do a podcast about our gem haul, but specifically rhodochrosite. Rhodochrosite is super awesome looking red mineral. It's beautiful. But I'm going to do a deep dive into our gems and specifically rhodochrosite, history of rhodochrosite, what it means to different cultures, how it's formed, where it's found. So I'm going to be doing a deep dive into that kind of stuff. If any of you are fans of kind of more specific subject matters in science and natural history and human history for that matter. So here's what I really wanted to talk about today, and I'm gonna have a hard time labeling this podcast because I just spent the first 15 minutes here or whatever talking about what's going on in my life basically in the other podcast for the museum. I'm driving to the museum right now, by the way. I'm in bumper to bumper Houston traffic. Technical side notes, I am recording this into my DJI Mic 2. I am not using the built-in noise cancellation. It was not good enough for use while driving. It is and it isn't. Like if it's the only thing you can use, it does reduce the noise. Absolutely, it's an invaluable tool to have in your kit. But I'm recording this raw into the microphone, no built-in noise reduction, because when I put the raw audio into DaVinci Resolve's noise reduction is better. The AI or whatever algorithms they're using in DaVinci Resolve is way better. And I've begun to start editing my podcasts now in DaVinci Resolve. The audio suite in DaVinci Resolve is quite robust, especially for a video editor. You can EQ, you can compress, you can expand, you can do all sorts of audio effects, you can duck underneath each other. It's very high end, and it kind of keeps my workflow very simple. For instance, if I need to make a video version along with a podcast, sometimes I just do it all within DaVinci Resolve instead of going from Reaper is my dedicated DAW, go for Reaper and then into DaVinci Resolve for videos. It just kind of cuts out a step in the workflow. So I just recently, for podcasts and audio work, I've been using just DaVinci Resolve. And then if I add a video, I could just add a video track on top of the audio track and off to the races. So what I actually wanted to talk about today was that I got a new tablet. Some geek tech news, I guess. So Samsung, they're going to release the Samsung Galaxy, what is it? S10 Ultra. I think they've already released the S10 and the S10 Plus tablets. The S10 Ultra is going to come out a little bit later. The S9 Ultra has been out for a while, obviously, and the S8 Ultra. The S8 Ultra is the first tablet Ultra series that they've made. It's a 14.6-inch tablet. And I have had the Tab S8 Ultra in my Amazon cart for probably at least a year. You know, when it was launched, it is ridiculously expensive. It's like a $1,200 tablet when brand new. I think the S9 Ultra brand new is still around $1,000, over $1,000, $1,100, and the S10 is going to be $1,200, $1,300. Mark my words, it's going to be over $1,000 for sure. So I had the S8 Ultra, waiting for that to age by a couple years. Somebody just ran a red light because Houston, who cares? Anyways, I had the S8 Ultra and they didn't use a blinker to turn right. How about that? Tab 8 S8 Ultra in my Amazon cart for over a year, waiting for the price to fall. And it finally fell to, for the base model, below $500 to get it refurbished, renewed, or whatever. So it was like $480 on Amazon for refurbished. I didn't go for just the cheapest model. I thought that's what I wanted. I spec'd it up slightly to the 512 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte of RAM model. I said, you know what, if I'm buying a new tablet, and I use my tablets, my Android tablets especially, for years. My previous tablet was the Tab S6, and I bought that in 2019, I think, 2018, 2019. I've had it for a good minute for a tablet, 4 or 5 years. And quite frankly, now we're going to get to the nuts and bolts of it, of my reasoning, why a 14.6-inch tablet. I had never used a tablet of that size before. I mean, part of it was just a curiosity. The other part was like, hey, I can think of areas of my workflow and my productivity where a giant screen and a stylus would work well for me. This is not a good place to be parking your car, dude. In the roundabout? No way. So, yeah, someone just was parked in the roundabout. Yeah, so I never had a massive tablet, and part of it's curiosity, and part of it is like, you know, I do a fair bit of video editing on my Android tablet. I use LumaFusion. LumaFusion is the best video editor on Android, period. It just is. It's extremely feature-rich. Well, what that also means is that there's a learning curve to it, and it's intimidating to use because it's not like CapCut or something like that, which is just really meant for anybody to use, and you don't have a super duper ton of control. You get granular with LumaFusion. LumaFusion is like using DaVinci Resolve or Premiere or Final Cut, but it's on Android. It is super feature rich and is a very good video editor for Android. If you are wondering what video editor should you get for your Android phone or your Android tablet, LumaFusion. Done. If you're a serious content creator, if you're a serious video editor and you need something on Android to take with you on the go, LumaFusion. It's like $20 or $30 depending on the day. I think I've seen it as low as $15. Super feature rich, learning curve because it is a professional video editor. There's no hand holding in it. There's no kind of like easy mode. It's just it's a non-linear editor, as feature rich as anything else for Android. So I was like, you know, I bet you LumaFusion would be amazing on a 14.6-inch Android tablet powered by Snapdragon. The S8 Ultra is Snapdragon Gen 1. So Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. They changed the naming scheme. It used to be like 945, 955. They went to Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. Like I think they're on Gen 3 now, as far as like tablets are concerned. And Qualcomm also makes, the ARM-based Windows PCs that are Snapdragon X chips. I won't get off into the weeds with that, but back to the S10 Ultra, Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, which is the same chip that was in my Galaxy Z Fold 4, which is not usable anymore. I thought by the 4th generation of folding Android phones that they'd have worked out the kinks. Now, to be fair though, I don't think that my Z Fold 4 just stopped working on its own. At the time, I had it in my pocket for like a year and a half, just right up against a strong neodymium magnet. I had a wallet with a magnetic clip, and the phone was just right up against it. You're not supposed to keep phones up against strong magnets, and I basically had it in my pocket, wedged right up against a strong magnet for a year and a half. The screen is fine, everything is fine, but the stylus doesn't work, and the like screen rotation doesn't work. Whatever chip controls all of that, it is one chip that controls all of that. That chip is just thrown out of whack, and I suspect it's because I had it up against a magnet for a year and a half. So that's not Samsung's fault. The folding phones of all generations of Samsung have had their issues that are Samsung's fault, quote unquote, because it's still folding phones. I know they've been out for a minute. They've been out for a few years now. It is still a bleeding edge technology. Folding phones are still very much a technology that is still being worked on and worked out. And, I liked having a folding phone. I love my Z Fold 4. I was so bummed to only have it for a year and a half or so, and then I needed a new phone, hence the S24 Ultra that I got several months ago. I like to use my phones for years and years and years. I used my S9, I used my S9 for, I don't know, I had it 4 or 5 years. I used that for, maybe, what was it, 3, 4 years? I used it for quite a while. Anyways, back to the Tab S8 Ultra. User experience. Yeah, LumaFusion and editing apps are awesome on a 14.6-inch screen. I think most people who are looking at an ultra-sized tablet, a 14.6-inch tablet, and I think there's some no-name Chinese brands that make a 15.6-inch tablet, which is just asinine, especially after you hold a 14.6-inch tablet. Okay, they're going to back in here. That's fine. My user experience is like, oh, 14.6 inches, that's like a 14-inch laptop. That's smaller than a 15-inch laptop. So, I think that'll be pretty cool. It is cool for productivity. It very much is. However, it is unwieldy. It is not necessarily a tablet you can just be laying on the couch or laying in bed with. Certainly you can use it in that function, but tablets for just lounging on the couch and laying in bed, those are the 10-inch tablets. Like, those are the 12-inch and below size tablets. I know the iPad Pro is like 12.3 inches or something like that. I've got an iPad Pro. It's awesome. But 14.6 inches, these kind of mega tablets, it's you learn very quickly. Yeah, this is a cumbersome beast just for casual consumption. And that's kind of my point here. I'm pulling into work, but I still have a few minutes to wrap up. I'm okay. That's my point here is, if you are looking, if you're listening to me, your podcast host, who is a person who has bought the tablet with their own money and has an honest review of it, the technology is amazing. The screen is world-class, best screens in the world. Obviously, all that stuff is utterly fantastic. Flagship, top of the game, better than any other manufacturer out there. The sheer size of it, though, this is the point I want to make with it. You need to have a very specific use case in mind for a giant screen tablet. If you need to kind of gauge whether or not this can work for you, like, take your laptop. I assume your laptop is 13 inches or larger, and just kind of hold your hands on the screen and hold it and see, like, can I use a tablet that's this big? Because that's basically what it is. you need to have a very specific use case in mind for a large screen tablet. So if you're somebody who uses a stylus a lot, like if you're an illustrator, you're an animator, whatever, you're going to be using that big screen real estate for editing purposes. Wonderful, perfect, nothing better. If you're just looking, you're a casual tablet user, as most people are, there's no problem with that. That's kind of that's where the niche of tablets are. It's kind of casual content consumption. If you're just about consumption, if you're just about laying on the couch and holding a tablet with one hand and surfing through YouTube and reading web pages and whatever, comics, online comics, I don't think that the Tab S8 Ultra, these ultra size screens are for you. It's like I said, if it's just for casual use, it is cumbersome. If you're using it for productivity, it is amazing. The other thing about it's a knock against, so here, I don't have any buyer's remorse on the S8 Ultra tablet, especially for the price I got it for. I think it was like $620. Since I didn't get the cheapest, I got a refurbished 16 gigabyte RAM version. I have zero buyer's remorse. I'm going to use this tablet for the next few years until I need something else. So there's no buyer's remorse though, but the big takeaway is just the screen size. It's unwieldy. An actual knock against Samsung. Like usually I don't have much poor to say about Samsung. Every once in a while they do get something wrong. They're a big manufacturer like anybody else, any other company. The biggest egregious, borderline, if not criminal, aspect of these Ultra laptops, the S8 Ultra, S9 Ultra, and the upcoming S10 Ultra, the price of the cover, just the basic cover, is like $90. Maybe it's a little. I paid 90 or 70 or 80 bucks for the official Samsung cover. It's a great cover, no problem with it. I want everything to be official and tight and compact and flush and work great. The only issue I have with the actual cover for the S8 Ultra is that the S Pen isn't covered up. Like on my Tab S6, the official cover had a flap that covered up the actual stylus, which was nice. On the S8 Ultra, at least, the basic cover doesn't have a flap that covers the stylus. The stylus is it's very strongly magnetic. It has not ever fallen off on its own over the past few days that I've kind of been carting it around. But I really feel better having that flap over the stylus like my Tab S6 had. S8 Ultra doesn't do that. I think the next step up, and this is where I'm really getting at, like the real borderline criminality of all this, is that you have the keyboard cover. They call it like the Tab book cover or whatever. $350. It is that's why I say borderline criminal. And it's not just me. A lot of other people say that the price of the keyboard of the book cover, whatever you call it, is $350. And it would be one thing if it was the best keyboard cover on planet Earth, but it is not. It is a $350 cover. And I should preface this by, I don't have the cover. This is just every review I've ever read about it. And just from what I can see, and just holding the official cover, non-keyboard cover, I can totally understand this because the materials are similar, or if not the same. $350 keyboard cover that feels every bit of $20. That's wobbly and flexy, and you can't use it on your lap because it flexes too much. It's not stable. The keys on a flat surface, I've heard, and I have no issue believing this at all, if you have it on like a table, it's great. The keys, they're well spread out. Obviously, it's a 14.6-inch tablet. I would hope that the keys are well spread out, that when you under perfect conditions, the actual keyboard feels great. Again, I have not tested it. This is all just things I reviewed. But if you're trying to use it in any sort of mobile fashion, if you're sitting on your couch trying to use it, if you are in bed trying to use it, like it's so flimsy that, it'll lose physical connection with the pads underneath it, the gold pads underneath it, so it'll disconnect every once in a while. It's just not $350. That's the thing. Even if it was $100, I think people would kind of say, yeah, what do you expect? It's pros and cons, but for $350, there's not enough pros to it. I absolutely have no intention of getting the keyboard cover for my Tab S8 Ultra for that exact reason. It's just, for one thing, $350. Imagine you're buying a new S9 Ultra or the upcoming S10 Ultra. You're spending $1,200, let's say, for the tablet, and then another $350 for the keyboard? That is asinine. Holy, you're approaching $1,500 for a dang Android tablet. I love Android tablets for what they are and the purposes that they serve. $1,500? Good Lord. I don't even need to explain to anybody listening what kind of a powerhouse slim like gaming PC, editing PC you can get for $1,500. For $1,500, you can get a slim gaming PC with like an RTX 4070, definitely an RTX 4060. You can get an RTX 4070 in a slim touchscreen like gaming editing PC for that kind of money. $1,400, $1,500. It's $1,400, $1,500 for an Android tablet is beyond comprehension. You can go get an X Elite if you want a Snapdragon based PC. Go get an X Elite for less than that. If you're spending the same amount of money on an X Elite like 2-in-1 laptop, dude, that is one reason why I said, okay, I like this form factor. I want to try this giant 14.6-inch form factor. I ain't spending no $1,400. I don't know what kind of rich, like oil oligarch, Russian oligarch or whatever is just going to be dropping that kind of coin. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not even a flex. It's like it's a more sense than money thing. No one's going to see you with that tablet and they're going to be impressed. It's, oh wow, that thing is huge. It looks gorgeous. The screen's amazing. It's very snappy. The Galaxy AI is really cool. All that kind of stuff is cool. And like, what'd you spend on this? Like, what is it? $600, $700, something like that? It can't be more than $700 or $800, can it? And you got to say, oh yeah, all in, this was $1,400. They'd spit out their coffee. Are you insane? What the heck did you spend $1,400 on an Android tablet for? $1,400, like for an iPad Pro. At least the iPad Pro can run, you know, like DaVinci Resolve, a very stripped down version of it. I'm not saying the iPad Pro is worth $1,400 or worth over $1,000, but for some people, I guess it is. The productivity apps arguably in the iPad OS ecosystem are better than on the Android side of things. Yeah, it's $1,400. Spending over $1,000 on an Android tablet is beyond comprehension. Absolutely beyond comprehension. I can sort of understand a phone being, you know, over $1,000. I spent like $1,100 on the S24 Ultra. That's just par for the course of a flagship. A flagship smartphone is going to command that price. But to me, for the features, for the power, for how often you use it, for the battery life, for the screen, again, mainly just for the power inside of it, I can edit videos just as quickly on my S24 Ultra phone as I can on my S8 Ultra tablet. But on the screen, on the phone screen, it's way more compact, cramped. It's just not, the workflow is severely restricted on a small screen, but the power is there to do it if you need to. The other thing, I think one of the biggest factors why I pulled the trigger on the S8 Ultra is that going over to the Mac side of things, Apple side of things, when I'm within my Apple ecosystem, so I'm using my 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip inside of there, and I have my iPad Pro next to it, it's seamless screen extension or mirroring. I can just have open up my iPad next to it, go into my MacBook Pro 16 and just say extend the screen over to my iPad seamlessly, and it's beautiful. So I can be editing video and then use the iPad screen as the clean feed to see what I'm editing, see the big picture of what I'm editing. Great. I didn't have any elegant way to do that on the Windows side. And since I mostly use Windows PCs, Windows laptops, I said, you know, it'd be great if I could have my Windows editing laptop with my RTX 4080 in my i7 13700K, it's 20 cores, whatever, 20 threads. If I could have this beast and then seamlessly just extend the screen over to my Android tablet, that'd be great. And you can obviously do that. That is a built-in feature, a wonderful built-in feature of modern Android tablets. So I can go just extend my screen wirelessly to my 14.6-inch S10 Ultra next to me for editing purposes. And it is wonderful. It is a dream. The screen it's OLED. I mean, it's a beautiful, accurate, reasonably bright screen. So editing with it, you know, opening DaVinci Resolve and having my timeline on my 17-inch laptop screen, and then my clean feed view over on the 14.6-inch tablet screen, OLED tablet screen, is baller. It's so good. For the price I paid for the experience, around $600, $700, let's say $700 all in with just the cover that I got for it. It's no, like I said, no regret at all. It's just for kind of laying on the couch consuming content. It's cumbersome. Let's just call it cumbersome. I have no regrets buying it at the price that I bought it for, used, you know, 2 years old. Double the price, $1,400 all in for like an S10 Ultra or an S9 Ultra. Take me out behind the shed and throw a rock at my skull. Like, I'm insane if I've done that. Like, that is crazy. Anyways, I gotta, you know, walk into the museum now. S8 Ultra was the main, you know, meat and potatoes of this podcast. Check out the Beyond Bones podcast. HMNS, Houston Museum of Natural Science, Beyond Bones podcast. Look for the purple color scheme. And subscribe there if you want to hear me deep diving into very well polished, very well produced podcast. I'll, of course, include links in the description here to like the Spotify and the Apple versions of it, but you can just search it. It's in Pocket. I use Pocket Casts on Android, and it's in there. But yeah, so you are worthy of love. You're worthy of giving love. You're worthy of receiving love. With all that's going on in the world, I hope y'all are safe. I do very much appreciate you all for listening. I appreciate your emails. Even if I don't respond to every single one of them, I know y'all take time to do that, and I appreciate it so much. I like to blame my ADD on it. Like, I'll see it and be like, oh, I need to respond to Ed. Ed, I see you, and I hear the sound bites you're sending me. I appreciate it in full. I hope an on-air quote-unquote shout-out is good enough for that purpose. But I'll try to be better about responding to emails. But yeah, y'all are loved. I truly appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Geek Therapy Radio. Go check out the Beyond Bones podcast from the Houston Museum of Natural Science. Link it below. Take care. Talk to y'all next time.